As coronavirus cases in Nigeria rise to more than 34,000, Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 warns against use of substandard hand sanitizers in circulation.
63% of alcohol-based sanitizers in Abuja do not have NAFDAC registration numbers.
On Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall discuss the Sexual Harassment Bill 2020.
There is no family in Nigeria where you don't find a victim of sexual harassment. It is either your wife when she was younger, or your daughter, or your sister, or even a niece who has gone through tertiary education system. Now, you will find out that they've had this brush with some randy lecturers who continue to see women as prerequisite of their office as lecturers. Now, those were certainly not my words. They were the words of Senator Ovie Omoagege in 2016. That's while at the 8th Assembly while sponsoring a bill on sexual harassment in tertiary education institution. And as a woman and a mother, Kingsley, of a female undergraduate, that hit home real hard.
Absolutely. Now, the bill was prompted by reports of very high-profile cases of sexual harassment involving lecturers in prominent universities across the country and prescribed 14 years or a minimum of 5 years jail term without an option of fine for lecturers and educators convicted of sexual harassment in tertiary institutions.
So, although the Academic Staff Union of Universities, ASU, condemned sexual harassment as unethical, immoral, and against the rules and regulations of the union, however, vehemently opposed and lobbied for the bill to be dropped on certain grounds, one of which was that it was discriminatory and subjective.
Well, the recorded audio of a postgraduate student, Monica Osagie, in 2018, plus the documentary evidence of a BBC undercover reporter detailing the involvement of Nigerian lecturers in sex for marks scandal, once more highlighted the increasing prevalence of the menace and difficulty in addressing the challenge.
But most worrisome is the public interpretation and, of course, the blame game that ensues when culprits of sexual harassment are exposed. For instance, rather than deal with the issues holistically, there have been calls for legislation and dress code for women, which is usually a reference point to justify sexual harassment.
And of course, motivated by the emotions and passions evoked by increasing cases of sexual molestation on female students, distinguished Senator Ovie Omoagege, who is the Deputy President of the Senate, has represented the bill, and it, of course, is entitled the Bill for an Act to Prevent, Prohibit, and Redress Sexual Harassment of Students in Tertiary Educational Institutions and for other matters connected therewith. Now, the bill has 27 clauses. It prescribes sterner punishment for convicted offenders in tertiary institutions. Now,
specifically, the bill seeks a 14-year jail term without any option of fine for convicted, persons, lecturers or educators. But fortunately, this time around, the bill has scaled through the Senate with the support of 106 senators and awaiting concurrence from the House of Representatives. But here are some of the issues that have been raised so far concerning this particular bill. The bill is good, but of course, it's 1 kilometer deep and only 1 centimeter wide. Now, others say it could have been good if the scope was not restricted or limited to tertiary institutions. But what do you think? Join us again on today's edition of Good Morning Nigeria as we present other perspectives to this bill. I am Claire Adilabu Abdul-Razak. Thank you for joining us this Friday.
And I'm Kingsley Osadolo. I join my colleague Claire to also welcome you to the program. It's, of course, the last for the week, and it's another wet morning here in Nigeria's Federal Capital Territory. As usual, we'll have our regular complimentary segments. Those segments will be followed by the highlights of the morning news. The segments, of course, include business and newspaper review. In the meantime, let's take the highlights with our colleague, Abdul Malik Adio. Good morning, Abdul Malik.
Good morning, Kingsley, and good morning, Claire. It's good to have you join us on the morning news. Now, burning issues affecting Nigerians' national development aspirations and the best way forward towards achieving the next level agenda were thoroughly analyzed as President Muhammadu Buhari received an audience presiding officers of the National Assembly.
I imagine that at the end of the day, the trajectory of ensuring a very good and purposeful operational way of doing things between the two arms will continue. Mr. President has always respected the legislature. He has always commended the National Assembly members for always been there to ensure that the requests by the executive in the national interest are processed, and we are sure that every member of the National Assembly has always been there to ensure that we do the right thing for this country, and Mr. President is in full support of our position that this relationship must be sustained at all times for the benefit of the people of Nigeria.
A momentous milestone has been achieved in the Buhari administration's effort at job creation and economic diversification with the launch of an unprecedented gold purchase program. The ceremony, performed virtually by President Muhammadu Buhari as part of the Presidential Artisanal Gold Mining Development Initiative, is designed to put a stop to illegal mining in Nigeria, standardize the activity, and mobilize the enormously untapped resource potentials in the sector.
150,000 jobs would be created for improved gold mining operations. These operations will help in diversifying our revenue base. Improved mining operation could lead to the generation of over 500 million United States dollars annually in royalties and taxes. These developments will also help in improving our foreign reserves by enabling the Central Bank of Nigeria to increase the amount of gold in its reserves.
Vice President Yemi Osinbajo has described macro, small and medium enterprises operators in Nigeria as champions working to keep the economy afloat, while reiterating the federal government's determination to support businesses in the country. This was during the third Micro, Small and Medium Enterprise Awards held virtually.
I expect that all of you who are attending this virtual event and the tens of millions of others nationwide to create an enabling environment for you to thrive. This is President Muhammadu Buhari's commitment to all of the millions of MSMEs in Nigeria, that will continue to stand by you, to support you, and to create opportunities for you to grow and prosper.
Now, the Nigerian Center for Disease Control, NCDC, has announced 595 new cases of COVID-19 in Nigeria. The latest figure released brings the total number of confirmed cases to 34,854. A total breakdown of the new cases from 24 states indicates that Lagos recorded the highest number with 156 cases, while Ondo State has 95. Rivers recorded 53, Abia 43, Oyo 38, Enugu 29, Edo 24, FCT 23, Kaduna recorded 20 cases. Others are Akwa Ibom, Anambra and Osun with 17 cases each. Ogun has 14, Kano has 13, Imo 11, Delta 6, Ekiti 5, Gombe and Plateau State recorded 4 cases each, and Cross River has 2 cases. The day's tally is completed by Adamawa, Bauchi, Jigawa and Yobe, recording 1 case. Confirmed cases by state, Lagos has the highest data with 13,097, followed by the FCT with 2,761, and Oyo coming third with 1,989 cases. With the latest development, the total number of active cases stands at 19,793, while 14,292 cases has been successfully treated and discharged, while 769 patients died unfortunately. And the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 has revealed that 63% of hand sanitizers in circulation in the nation's capital do not have NAFDAC registration number. Chairman of the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19, Boss Mustafa, therefore advised Nigerians to be circumspect and avoid purchasing substandard product.
Ordinarily, that ought to stimulate local production because of increased demand. However, we regret to inform you that following a survey conducted by the Nigeria Institute for Pharmaceutical Research and Development, NIPRID, 63% of alcohol-based sanitizers in Abuja do not have NAFDAC registration numbers. The Presidential Task Force appeals to the patriotic spirit of Nigerians and requests that they should desist from manufacturing substandard goods which could further endanger our unsuspecting Nigerians who innocently purchase them.
Younger people have died here in Abuja. The youngest person to die from COVID was just 38 years old. So we are all at risk.
COVID-19 must not be trivialized, and all citizens must care for themselves, their families, and each other.
Last week I mentioned that we've been working on a new platform through which people will be able to check their results themselves, actually. And that platform is nearly ready.
Those are the news highlights for now. The program continues with Claire and Kingsley after this break.
Main way coronavirus spread is when infected people sneeze and cough. Small droplets of fluid expelled by cough or sneezes are laced with viruses looking for new respiratory tracts to infect. When a sick person sneezes around someone who is healthy, the virus can land in the nose, mouth, or even the eyes, causing an infection. Symptoms can include fever, cough, shortness of breath. Symptoms may appear within 2 to 14 days. Seek medical advice if you develop symptoms and have been in close contact with a person known to have COVID-19, or if you live or have recently been in an area with ongoing spread of COVID-19. This message is brought to you by the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, Africa's largest. In this time of despair, our country, Nigeria, needs us now more than ever. We stand a chance to save our great country, Nigeria. A chance to rise up from this pandemic stronger and better. What will be the gain if we do not learn from other countries and observe the lockdown to stop the further spread of the virus? If we loosen our guards and allow this virus doom our very existence, then what have we gained? This is the call to every Nigerian to unite as one and stop the spread of this deadly virus. Stay at home and stay safe. Remember, the virus doesn't move unless we move. This message is brought to you by the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, Africa's largest television network. In this time of despair, our country, Nigeria, needs us now more than ever. We stand a chance to save our great country, Nigeria. A chance to rise up from this pandemic stronger and better. What will be the gain if we do not learn from other countries and observe the lockdown to stop the further spread of the virus? If we loosen our guards and allow this virus doom our very existence, then what have we gained? This is the call to every Nigerian to unite as one and stop the spread of this deadly virus. Stay at home and stay safe. Remember, the virus doesn't move unless we move. This message is brought to you by the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, Africa's largest television network. We have observed the lockdown. We have practiced the measures in order to curb the spread of the virus, but we can do better. The coronavirus spread is increasing daily, and only together can we cut down the numbers and defeat the spread of the virus. Remember, COVID-19 is not a death sentence, and a recovered patient cannot spread the disease. Do not stigmatize. Do not hesitate to report any case, or if you have come in contact with anybody that has been infected with COVID-19. If you have cough and fever, please stay at home and call your state hotline. Find state numbers at www.covid19.ncdc.gov.ng. Remember, it is for your own good and for the good of every Nigerian. Let us do better and defeat the virus. Together, we can do this. This message is brought to you by the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, Africa's largest television network.
Nigerians, coronavirus is dangerous. It can kill. When you see this sign, high fever, cough, shortness of breath, drowsiness, pneumonia, don't panic, don't hide, don't embark in self-medication. Promptly visit the nearest medical facility. Report all cases to the nearest hospital. Prevention is key. Avoid contact with infected persons. Avoid crowded areas as much as possible. Wash your hands regularly. Use hand sanitizers. Your life is precious. Stay alive. Live long, live right. This message is sponsored by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture and the Nigerian Film Corporation. Nigerian Film Corporation, powering possibility.
All right, welcome back. This is Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. Now, Central Bank of Nigeria is going tough on loan defaulters, and that's to check non-performing loans. Comfort Omodo has more on this and other stories in the business news.
Within the week, the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, issued the Global Standing Instruction, GIS, giving authorization to financial institutions and deposit money banks to commence seizure of funds of loan defaulters from accounts of defaulters in other banks. This initiative has been lauded by members of the public, even as economists say it will reduce non-performing loans in the banking industry, watchlist consistent loan defaulters, as well as facilitate improved credit repayment culture.
They have all records of customers, and now they are going further to have BVN records and to have links to all other banks, which means no matter where you hide your money, whether savings account, current account, domiciliary account, investment account, or joint account, they'll be able to remove that money.
The Global Standing Instruction, which will take effect from the 1st of August 2020, is expected to be managed by the Nigerian Interbank Settlement System. And in the Nigerian stock market, stocks maintain positive posture after the day's trading session. Investors advanced trades with 104.22 billion naira, with the Nigerian Stock Exchange All-Share Index firming up by 0.83% and closed at 24,330 basis points. This is against the previous records of plus 0.06% increase, and its year-to-date returns is currently at plus 9.36%. Ikeja Hotel led 17 gainers against 16 losers, topped by Nigerian Aviation Handling PLC, NACO, at the end of the trading session. With business news, Comfort Amodu.
Many thanks, Comfort Amodu, for the business package. Coming up next now is Newspaper Review.
All right, let's introduce our newspaper reviewer for today, as always. Baya Toyobi is in the studio. Baya, it's another wet Friday.
Yes.
Why does it choose to rain on Fridays?
Well, it's the rainy season, and it's better for us, especially our competitors who want the rain to boost their farming activities. Although excessive rain can also have its own consequences, but it's a balancing act. Good morning, Kingsley.
Would you want the rain?
He had a description for it yesterday in Benin. Rain that is very persistent. What did you call it?
I don't want to repeat it this morning. No, but after the program, that's our viewers in Benin who understand the Edo language, grasped it essentially, and they say it was an appropriate way of describing the intermittent rainfall actually, yes. Not persistent, intermittent. That's what we were talking about yesterday. Okay. But this morning, it's another cool weather that we have, and the rains are there. Let's take a look at the Nation newspaper. Nation newspaper, above the nameplate of the Nation newspaper, it says Boko Haram demands 20 million naira to free 75-year-old's daughter and niece. That's on page 4. It says Boko Haram demands 20 million naira to free 75-year-old's daughter and niece. Other headlines there, it says Tinubu consoles Kuka, that's Bishop Kuka, over mother's death. And Lille laments Osimhen's imminent departure. That's a sports story on page 31. Well, that's a Nigerian story. I'm surprised the Nation didn't capture the victory of Real Madrid last night, clinching their 34th La Liga title in Spain. And below the nameplate of the Nation newspaper, Obasanjo's government emptying treasury. That's an allegation by the APC. PDP rejects APC request to transfer case to Abuja, and movement will rescue state from captors, says chair. Details of that story you'll find on page 6. NDDC crisis. Buhari orders speedy coordinated probe. With a number of riders, acting MD and others walk out on reps. We won't tolerate rascally appointees, says Lawan, who is Senate President. Hearts wants Ponde arrested, that's the acting MD of NDDC. And Southside Governors Forum backs forensic audit. 63% of sanitizers are counterfeit, says federal government. And then you see the coronavirus in figures in the sidebar there, also on the front page. Total number of cases in Nigeria are now getting close to 35,000. Unfortunately, fatalities 769. And we still have nearly 20,000 active cases. And the photograph on the front page there shows the president, his chief of staff, and the central bank governor displaying the locally mined gold bar during the virtual launch and purchase at the presidential villa. Nigeria to make $500 million yearly from gold export. That's page 27. World Bank, that's the kicker. 42% of jobs lost to COVID-19 in 4 months. Hospitality and service industry was hit. That's page 8. Buhari sends service chiefs to Northwest, page 4. Ngige sets up panel on NSITF managing director and others. That's the Social Insurance Trust Fund and managing director and others. That's on page 5. Claire.
Yeah, indeed. Another story also relating to the NDDC saga. That's the lead story on the front page of the Nigerian Pilot. Boldly captioned, another walkout. Comes with, should I say, multiple riders there. The first one is, as acting NDDC MD walks out on panel probing 81 billion naira unapproved expenditure. But here is his own explanation. Says he can't testify before reps panel chairman accused of corruption. And then the reps are threatening to arrest him for walking out on panel. And Buhari, that's President Buhari, backs probe, urges speedy completion. So that's also part of the trending stories. But take a look at the picture story. This is another interesting one there. You see these are civil servants, apparently below level 14, being prevented from entering into their offices by security operatives in line with the federal government's COVID-19 guideline for civil servants. And this is exactly at the Federal Secretariat Complex in Abuja yesterday. So it's trending there. Bayo, I'm sure you're surprised at that. Let's look at other stories so we can wrap up all the reviews. Retirement. NASC queries Sani Omolori for gross insubordination. And then trending stories. CBN seeks to replace BOFIA, that's a Bank and Other Financial Institutions Act of 2004. Ngige inaugurates panel to probe alleged 3.4 billion naira NSITF fund. And the unfortunate incident of the death of the first female combat helicopter is there. Sister of late female combat helicopter pilot suspects foul play. And Monarch besiege NAS over police refusal to pay land compensation. Fraud allegations. PDP demands Mago's arraignment. And that story on... Okay, I almost forgot this one. Just below the nameplate, WAEC Southwest schools to reopen August 3. WAEC, Southwest schools to reopen August 3. Details of that on page 8, bio.
Well, let's start with the running story. The Minister of Aviation, Senator Hadi Sirika, has indicated that investigation into reported incidents of the alleged breach of COVID-19 protocols at the 3 airports are being looked into. A former governor in the Northwest was said to have breached the protocol in Kano. A serving governor from the Northwest breached the protocol in Port Harcourt, and a newspaper publisher also breached the protocol at the Abuja airport. The Minister of Civil Aviation read that according to Civil Aviation Rule Part 1791, Sub 1, it says any passenger who becomes unruly at the airport terminal building or on board a particular aircraft commits an offense. Sequently, such a person is subject to the punishment of a criminal referral for imprisonment of not less than 2 months. And he says it can be up to 10 years. He says they will investigate. Where it is not true, they will apologize. But where it is true, the law will take its course. Meanwhile,
the investigation ordinarily should be straightforward. There are CCTVs at the airport. All you need to do is to play back the CCTV and see precisely what happened. And if there are no CCTVs that capture that, it means that you have to install CCTVs at those locations. So there's no question of looking for hearsay evidence or oral evidence from any person to say, were you there? Or an eyewitness, were you there? No, I was there. No, I wasn't there. The CCTV captures it, and you play it back at the material time. And the behavior of whoever is deemed to have breached the protocol is out there for everybody to see. And you take that, it's admissible in evidence anyway.
The other running story of concern is at the National Assembly. There's reported to be heightened security at the National Assembly, and this is subject to 2 possible reasons. One is to the fact that it is to prevent the embattled clerk from coming to the office. The second is that persons who are in sympathy of the latest development there are alleged to be wanting to demonstrate, and therefore there is initiative to stop hoodlums from taking over. But meanwhile, the chairman of the National Assembly Service Commission is said to have issued a query to the embattled clerk saying that his press release is a subject of insubordination, and therefore he has been given 24 hours within which to respond to a query why disciplinary action should not be carried ahead upon him. Meanwhile, Tribune reports that sources indicate that 180 senior personnel will be affected, and other 50 senior management staff will be affected if the retirement age at 35 years and 60 is enforced as the management services is. Currently, it is said that there are many staff who have left the services but are being engaged on contract because of the kind of vacancies that have existed there.
Bayo, quickly speak to this issue of civil servants. I don't know if they're all below the level 14 guidelines from the PTF. You know, why are they, breaking the guidelines?
Well, the guidelines is that the officers of level 14 and above are supposed to be going to the office. Until that is extended to all civil servants, I think apparently they are weary and tired of sitting at home, and people want to go to work. And other than that, I don't see any reason why they should be up in arms demonstrating.
No, it wasn't a demonstration, actually.
Yes.
I don't think it wasn't a demonstration. The paper didn't indicate that it was a demonstration. It was actually probably, them trying to get back to their offices.
Maybe they are weary or tired of sitting at home doing nothing. The other story
I was just wondering, the story on the NDDC.
Yes, NDDC.
Because that's the lead story for the Nation newspaper. It says
Yes.
NDDC crisis, Buhari orders speedy coordinated probe. I think that what is important, the probe, no probe, interim management committee is set up, they run for a while, they disband. For me, the most important message to take from the operations of the NDDC over the years is simply as follows. Can President Muhammadu Buhari change the narrative at the NDDC positively? Because the NDDC, just to a large extent, just appears to be a gravy that some people go there, and the whole idea is not to bring development to the region for which the commission was intended, but you keep having all these stories about corruption, alleged corruption, and so on and so forth. What can President Muhammadu Buhari do to alter this narrative? And the kind of persons who are also appointed to run the affairs of NDDC, it's also important. Oftentimes, you find it's an opportunity for some persons to feather their nest and thereafter seek political offices. So what is the basis for you going in there to say you want to build a war chest and thereafter you get on there? And then there are also issues, according to insiders, as to the kind of almost scandalous allowances that the managers of NDDC get. Yes, it's intended to encourage them to work hard, but some of those allowances are just scandalous. If you say a person is entitled to receive so much as per diem or extra code, fine. But take a look at it. Does it fit and suit the prevailing economic circumstance? Does it also align, for instance, with the whole idea of the NDDC, which is to bring development to the people? Managers are busy, of course, fattening their pockets on account of legitimate earnings. And in the meantime, the people who are supposed to be developed remain, almost in a fifth world environment.
Alleged fattening their pocket, yes. But however,
I said legitimate earnings.
Yes.
Legitimate is the legitimacy that should be questioned.
Yes,
you can say approve, but what is the basis of that approval? Assuming you say, for instance, a person, I'm just giving you an example, that an officer is entitled to 10 million naira furniture allowance. What kind of furniture are you going to buy for 10 million naira?
In fact, the president has expressed concern, and he wants a speedy coordinating activity between the interim management, the audit probe ordered into the activities of the NDDC, as well as the probe from the National Assembly. But the president's concern is that he wants to get to the root of the obstacles that has retarded the intended development meant for the Niger Delta Development Commission for those states of the Niger Delta. Yesterday, the current managing director of the NNDC, Keme Badjukumo Ponde, worked out on the House committee after alleging that the committee chairman who was presiding has also questions to answer, which the NNDC has allegations, and therefore he had expected that the chairman should recuse himself from presiding over. And that led to the second workout, for which yesterday President Muhammadu Buhari read the Riot Act, that all heads of federal agencies and civil servants must accord due respect to members of the National Assembly when they approach them.
All right, Bayo. We'll keep an eye on things as they say, as it unfolds, especially with the NDDC and the other matters. Thank you, Bayo.
Yeah, we're going to thank Bayo. Just saw the photograph on the front page of the Nation with regard to the launch of the gold bars. Now, this is it's a milestone.
Positive development.
It's a milestone, but it also raises the issue of security at the mines. Because if you look at countries where mining is a forest, a huge forest, and South Africa and Zimbabwe, they have tight security around this. And it's not the same bullion van arrangement that you find all over the place. So it requires a great deal of security to protect all of this. I hope that the security agencies will also follow up accordingly, so you don't keep hearing stories of gold mines that have been snatched.
And the bold step there is that the central bank is going to be the cross for accepting those gold mines. So it will eliminate all those within the fringes who are trying to carry the gold outside the country.
Okay, the producer is saying we've exhausted our time for this paper review. Bayo, again, I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Do have a wonderful weekend. We'll see you on Monday by God's grace. All right, you're watching Good Morning Nigerian, the network service of the NTA. Our discussion today is bordering on the bill, that all-important Sexual Harassment Bill 2020. Let's listen to correspondent Uyeyemi Ajayi's background there to kickstart our conversation.
The coronavirus, also known as COVID-19, is spreading at an alarming rate all over the globe, including Nigeria. With the number of infected persons in Nigeria increasing daily, prevention is better than cure. Coronavirus has no cure. The virus spreads from one person, who affects two persons, and by the time the affected person is isolated, the two persons have affected four, and it keeps spreading. You must take preventive measures to save yourself and that of the people around you. Always wash your hands with soap and water. Put distance between yourself and others. Whenever you cough or sneeze, cover your mouth. Clean and disinfect surfaces. Stay at home if you're sick and contact the proper authorities. Together, we can cut down the spread of the coronavirus. This message is brought to you by the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, Africa's largest TV network.
Everyone has always been faced with a moral question between what is right and what is wrong. Yet not everyone is ready to do the right thing. This is where we come in. We are Jai's Bank, committed to making a difference by doing the right thing even if we stand alone. A place where transparency is an attitude and trust is a culture. A place where profit is shared and losses borne together. At Jai's Bank, we support you to shape a better tomorrow, a partnership to birth your dreams. Jai's Bank, for a better life.
Alpha, say tomorrow still day on.
What's your tomorrow?
Community meeting now.
You know they here, Abi?
Now beg you. See, if we meet for my house, inside parlor, then go no.
This COVID-19 is not a child's play.
If we want to elect a new secretary, we fit to
Do one for WhatsApp, or for Skype, or even on Zoom. Or we just wait.
I will not negotiate
This social distancing. It is non-negotiable.
Not every infected person shows symptoms, but every infected person is contagious. Avoid large gatherings and self-isolate if you think you might have come in contact with a carrier. Your safety and the safety of others is in your hands.
This message is from the Akinfade Foundation in partnership with the National Orientation Agency with support from MacArthur Foundation.
Coronavirus is real. Steps to avoid this pandemic. Wash your hands regularly or sanitize your hands. Keep social and physical distancing. Avoid crowded places. Stay at home unless absolutely necessary. Don't touch your eyes, nose, or mouth if your hands are not clean. Avoid the spread of coronavirus. Coronavirus is real.
All right, welcome back. Just like I earlier introduced, we'll be looking at the Sexual Harassment Bill 2020, of course, sponsored by the Deputy President of the Senate, Senator Ovie Omo-Agege today. But let's take a look at our background report by correspondent Uyemi Ajayi.
The university, the citadel of learning where degrees are awarded based on character and learning. For at least 2 years, students are drilled and taught rudiments of each discipline of choice, which brings about much interactions between the students and lecturers, who give final consent of the worthiness of a student to graduate. Knowing fully well the power the lecturers have in deciding the fate of the students, some of these lecturers engage in some unpleasant, shady activities such as sexual harassment as bait to award pass marks to students. For some time, the social media was awash by some lecturers in university who has used sex for mark tactics to get at some of their admired students, exposing how some of the lecturers even pass some of the students at will. These acts has truncated the lives of many of these students, who sometimes end up not even passing, while some who manage to scale the hurdle have some bitter stories to tell. The recent bill passed by the Senate on the prohibition of sexual harassment in the universities is said to be a laudable effort of the 9th Senate to stem the tide of the heinous act by the lecturers. The bill, provided punishment without an option of fine for any educator found guilty of the offense. Now that the Senate has passed the Sexual Harassment Bill 2020, will the House of Representatives follow suit? Even when both chambers pass it, will the President assent to the bill? When will this be extended to the larger society, where more worrisome deeds are carried out? Are there penalties for ladies who also law lecturers for sex? And what are the other offenses in the bill? Answers to these questions and more shortly with guests on Good Morning Nigeria.
All right, many thanks, Oyemi Ajayi, for that background. With us in the studios to discuss this issue, we have them, of course, in Abuja, Kaduna, and via Skype from Lagos. First, let's welcome Prince Efe Duku, who is the Special Advisor on Legislative and Plenary Matters to the Deputy President of the Senate. Prince Duku, pleasure to have you with us on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you so much. Good morning.
Here with us in the studios as well is a familiar face, Awa Shekarau. She's the newly elected chairman of the Nigerian Bar Association Federal Capital Territory Chapter, otherwise known as Unity Bar. Our pleasure to have you with us, and congratulations on your election.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Nigeria. Thank you.
All right, let's go to our Kaduna studio, and we have Hawau Evelyn Yusuf, Professor of Criminology and Gender Studies, Director, Center for Gender Studies, Kaduna State University. Thank you for joining us, Prof.
Good morning, Nigeria.
Okay, also joining us via Skype from Lagos, Professor Biodun Uguyemi, and he is the President, Academic Staff Union of Universities, ASU. We're glad to have you with us.
Good morning, Nigerians.
All right, so let's get back to the studio here and start with the Special Advisor to the Deputy President of the Senate on Legislative and Plenary Matters. Quickly tell us what is the merit and justification, for this new bill.
Okay, thank you. The Deputy President of the Senate is a father, is a parent. He has sisters, he has nephews, he has nieces. Just like in every family, you have these people. You have people, students, particularly the female students, who we often hear from complaints of sexual harassment. And naturally, he thought he should do something about it. When you have a platform, particularly a political platform in this context, you want to look at problems of society that you can deal with. He identified this very early in 2016 and asked us to research what we could do about it. And we came out with a report. Suffice to say that he has clarity of thought on this. He's always felt very strongly that there has to be a solution to this problem. One, we know that the relationship that exists between the educator and the student is that of authority, dependency, and trust. And if in any way it is abused, then there must be solutions. There must be a response. We had, as I said, an extensive study of the situation, where we even saw that the National Universities Commission at a point issued a report where it said conclusively that sexual harassment of students is one of the most serious infractions in tertiary institutions. And we also saw that there was a report issued by ASU at a point in time where it said that that report made clear that there were no solutions to the problem.
There were no solutions.
There were no solutions as at that time. That what they only do, using the exact words, that they are only using moral suasion to get their members to do what is right. You see, where there is a problem that has assumed that pandemic size in society, you don't want to leave it to moral suasion. The legislator must look at the laws in place and see what you can do. So he said, look, let us do this bill. And we did it. And it received wide acceptance, expectedly, because as I said in my opening remark at the beginning, if this is a problem that is in almost every home, or where that is felt in every home in the country, then naturally we thought that it should be well received. And that is what has happened. So that primarily is a justification that there is a problem. The problem has been identified by various stakeholders. There is consensus, near consensus, that it should be dealt with. There are few dissenting opinions, but not necessarily that they really disagree with whether there is a problem that has to be dealt with. It has actually been a question of how do you do it. So that is it.
I just wondered, well, tell us, this is not the first time that the bill has been introduced. In the 8th Senate, it was introduced, but unfortunately, it didn't become law. But on this occasion, you had the benefit of having the bill passed by the Senate. Why did it fail to become an act in 2016?
In the 8th Senate, it was actually passed in the Senate, just as it has been passed now. But action was not taken in the reps. So, of course, you need concurrence of both houses for it to be transmitted to the president for assent. So our expectation is that having been passed a bit early now in the Senate, that the House of Reps will act on it. We do not, I also don't think that it was a deliberate act on the part of the House of Reps then, to be fair to them, not to pass it. Maybe timing was actually a challenge. But now that there is sufficient time, we just hope and pray that this House of Reps will act on it quickly.
In your consultations, especially with ASU, you just said that you also did a research and found where ASU made a statement about the fact that it is beyond solution. Did you try to find out what the issue, what the solution was? Did ASU mean that the existing legislation on it was not being enforced? Was it a solution referring to enforcement, lack of enforcement, or was there no enforcement at all?
Well, I think essentially the argument or the position of ASU seems to be that the universities have autonomy.
No, I want you to, because you said that ASU issued a statement saying there was no solution, that they were only relying on moral suasion.
Suasion, yes.
Yes. Did they mean no solution as per no legislation at the time for, this matter? Or did they mean that the legislation was not effective?
In that report or in that statement, what came across is that ASU identified clearly that there is no tough legislation on the matter. Because if in their opinion, they recognize otherwise, they would not have been talking about moral suasion. Because where there is the existence of law, you don't necessarily begin to discuss moral suasion.
So they identified a gap with the legislation.
Exactly.
All right, Prince Doko, we're going to have to pause you here. Let's go over to our Kaduna Network Center, where we earlier introduced Professor Hawa Evelyn Yusuf, Professor of Criminology and Gender Studies, and is also Director, Center for Gender Studies at Kaduna State University. Prof, look, this is a problem that has been with us for several decades, and it seems as if the perpetrators, alleged those who've been caught, just took it now as a matter of right to continue with their lechery. Why has this been so that we haven't found internal solutions from within the academia?
Like you said, this is an issue or a problem that has been with us from time immemorial, and it seems that it is getting, it has escalated to the state of a pandemic, to the extent that we are now seeing these things even on the increase. The issue is the legislation for this type of acts has never been properly implemented. In fact, there are lapses in this legislation that has made it easy for people to continue to do these things and get away with it. And even though this bill is particular to the academia, you need to also take note that the existing legislation is that encompasses the whole of the society or the whole of Nigeria, because when you commit these crimes, it's the same legislation that works on it, whether in the academia or outside academia. But now we have a bill that is specifically looking at the tertiary institutions generally, not necessarily the university, as it were. So I think why these things had continued was because there were no stringent penalties for these offenses in the first instance. Now that this bill is out, we do hope that it becomes law and that people in the academia will become very conscious of the existence of this bill, and perhaps it will reduce the rate of perpetration in the institutions.
Okay, let me bring in the newly elected chairman of the Unity Bar, Haja Shekara. Do you believe, because I hear Kingsley said sexual harassment has been with us for a long time, concord by the professor of criminology. But we're looking at sexual harassment in tertiary education. This bill is specific. Has it been endemic, or is it only being, perpetuated in recent times?
Sexual harassment it has actually gotten to that stage. You can actually say it is pandemic. And I must tell you that sexual harassment is practically in every facet of our lives, not just in tertiary institution. But of course, that of the tertiary institution has taken a front stage, particularly after the documentary that was done by BBC, where, a live instance, happened in Unilag and also in Ghana. So that really brought the issue to the, front burner. But I can assure you that even, in fact, it is even worse in the workplace, in places where people work and all that. And that was why when the Senate did the public hearing in respect of the sexual harassment, a group of civil society had submitted a memoranda to say, can we, broaden the scope, and not just in the tertiary institution, in workplace, it is happening even in the secondary schools, and also you won't believe it, even in primary schools, these things are happening.
But do you see a vacuum or a gap in existing legislation that this one is
Yes, there is. In fact, this is the first time sexual harassment is brought out and criminalized. And I recall while I was country director of IPAS, I left IPAS last year, November, there was a study done about countries that have sexual harassment laws. Nigeria was one of them that didn't have. We didn't have sexual harassment as a crime. But there are, the penal code and the criminal code has provisions for domestic violence, assault, and what have you. But sexual harassment as a crime, there was none. So this bill is actually coming in to fill a gap that is there. The only sad thing for me is that it's only limited to tertiary institution. It would have been lovely for us to have a more broader, legislation that looks at sexual harassment in every, facets of life. Because lots of women, we've seen people come out, complain about, for instance, the lady who complained about the professor in UI, and who was convicted. Exactly, sorry, Abafemi Awolowo. She finally graduated, and when she went to for an interview, a job interview, you know, the information we got was that they said they don't want a whistleblower here, and she's been discriminated upon trying to get a job. You know, so what am I saying? This bill it's a right step in the right direction. I only wish it was, you know, brother, but that doesn't take away the importance of having a legislation on sexual harassment.
All right, thank you very much, Hawa Shakarau. Let's bring in now Professor Biodun Oguyemi, who is President of the Academic Staff of Summit Staff Union of Universities, ASU. Prof, well, still exploring the amplitude of sexual harassment in educational institutions, particularly in tertiary institutions, there is a view that there's been a culture of silence and conspiracy with respect to the gross abuse of authority and trust by the educators in relation to the students who suffer these forms of harassment. Sex for Grades, the code room at the University of Lagos, and then, of course, the convict at Obafemi Awolowo University. That this is a challenge that the ladies in particular take with them as scars for the rest of their lives. And in the meantime, those who perpetrate this thing assume that it is their right.
Well, thank you very much, Kingsley. The issue under discussion here is about the desirability or otherwise of that legislation. Of course, I need to make some initial clarifications. ASU as a union does not support sexual harassment under any guise. ASU has consistently worked with university authorities to see how we could prevent and control cases of sexual harassment on our campuses. ASU as a union has on every campus a committee, we call ethics committee, that addresses issues of relationship with our students, unethical practices among our members. And at every point, the union does not hesitate to escalate whatever findings will come about our members who are having unethical behaviors. So, in summary, ASU will work for and support a move that is fair and just in addressing this problem. But where ASU has problem is the nature of this legislation. I want to thank Awa in the house there, in your studio, who has actually brought out the key issue that came up during public hearing that we had on this piece of legislation earlier in the year. We had engaged government or the National Assembly on the discriminatory nature of this legislation. And we brought out the fact that if care is not taken, it is going to test a thick dose of stigma against our members, particularly male lecturers. Already, it appears we are criminalizing male lecturers, calling them predators, and people who are perpetually involved in harassing students to whom they should play guardians and parental roles. their lives. That is not correct. And like I was said earlier, I thought that the direction that public hearing went was that this legislation should be brought in to cover the entire education system so that it doesn't look as if we are targeting a group that we had already passed a verdict of no confidence in. As she observed, there are civil society groups that came to that public hearing and said that there were cases of sexual harassment, rape, and so on in primary schools, in secondary schools. Now, if you define educators and you limit educators to tertiary institutions, is that definition broad enough? Does it actually represent what we mean by educators? And anybody that looks at that piece of legislation is giving the impression as if there are no existing laws that are used in handling such cases, even including tertiary institutions. And so we feel that that law, that bill is flawed. Just like she observed, if you see gaps in existing legislations, penal code, criminal code, and other laws that you have that could be relevant, why not talk about those gaps? We have observed over time that we have had cases of rape, cases of sexual harassment in almost every sector of the society. In fact, just a few days ago, a former acting managing director of NDDC alleged that the minister sexually harassed her. So are we going to formulate separate laws for ministers? Are we going to formulate separate laws for primary schools? Are we going to formulate separate laws for workplaces, just like Abuja said? Are we going to formulate separate laws for police and other security agencies? The case of Professor Akindele, you that was cited earlier, he is currently convicted. He's serving a jail term, I think, of 11 years or thereabout. We didn't wait for this sexual harassment bill to get him jailed. So what we are saying in essence is that let us work together to address this problem. Well, if people say it's approaching a pandemic level, then it means it cannot be for the higher institutions alone. People from higher institutions are in the larger society. If people are doing it in higher institutions, it must then be prevalent in other sectors of the society. We agree that, and we are already working in that direction. As we speak, many universities are producing policies, mostly called gender policies, that would define relationship between lecturers and their students. And we as in other parts of the world. I am familiar with what is happening in South Africa, and I've also seen these things being practicalized in some other European countries, particularly Finland. I know gender policies are what they use to track and identify people who could be engaged in this kind of illicit affair with their students. And from there, the law enforcement agencies will take over. So this is what we have been saying. People should not see ASU as being frightened by the formulation of this bill, as we have read in some media, that ASU is up in arms against this bill because ASU is trying to protect its members. Our members are not criminals. Our members are not sexual predators. We know many of our members who have played this role of local parentis for their students effectively. As we speak, many of our graduate students do call us to come and share their wedding. And we gladly do. Many of them, female and male, we have supported while in the universities, and the relationship we established with them still continues. So we will appeal to Nigerians that Nigerians should see our perspective. And we are particularly not impressed that after the public hearing, our views were not captured, just like the views of some other civil society groups that came there to say that, well, this bill as it is discriminatory. That is what we are saying.
Professor Guyemi, let me ask you just two questions. You talked about, of course, the existence of internal mechanism and the ethics committee in some of the, or most of the institutions. Okay, let me put it this way. Why did it take the undercover of, a foreign media outfit to unravel the incident at, Unilag? And why did the ethics committee, why wasn't I aware of the goings on at the upper room if it was so effective?
Well, as you will agree with me, not all cases of criminality are detected in the larger society all the time. But where we strengthen the existing structures, where we identify gaps, and that is why we are conducting research every day. Research is meant to address gaps in existing modes of behaviors, in existing ways of doing things in the society, and so on. So we are not saying that what we have presently is perfect, that the mechanism, the internal mechanism is perfect. But what we are saying is that on a daily basis, we can work towards strengthening the existing mechanism. And even if we want to come up with another legal framework, it should not be targeted at individuals that are narrowly defined. Educators in this context, the term educators is narrowly defined, and we don't think that will serve the purpose of this society, because we are pushing ourselves to the point that some male lecturers may say we don't even want to supervise female students, because what this law has done, it has not taken care of lecturers who are aligned, lecturers who are set up because students want to blackmail them to get higher grades. If you study research report on sexual harassment world over, we have had cases where professors committed suicide because they were falsely accused and they were not given fair hearing. And in fact, recently, I think there was a report in Aba. A professor was accused, and it took another 19 years to discover that this professor was falsely accused. And you can imagine what will have happened in a society like ours, where we don't even have mechanism for tracking. So what happened 10 years ago, nobody is talking about it today. And if I've been falsely accused, and on that count of false accusation, I've been made to face the guillotine, it means that there is no opportunity for me to experience a redress, and that is the end of my life. So we are saying that let the context be broadened. Let's think of what we can do to strengthen structures such that we can all work together to identify those who can call miscreants, or if you like it, deviants in the system. For every system, there's a deviant, and there's no perfect system anywhere in the world.
Addresses his question. I know he has a question. Just take this one again. You think that the internal mechanism can be strengthened. How do you hope to do that when what you have already do not have the force of the law? Is this bill not part of that strengthening force?
No, I've just told you that in some of the cases are identified. In fact, let me say this. What the university disciplinary processes do, as we have now, is that where you have cases that are beyond the university regulations to handle, you are turned over to the law enforcement agencies. Take the case of rape, for instance, which is a criminal offense. The university at best will dismiss you, but they will hand you over to the police for prosecution. And it happens in many other organizations, not just in the university system. But we are saying that the university structures of staff ethics and professional disciplinary committee can be strengthened with policies where we don't have policies. I will give you the example of South Africa. Where if you're a lecturer in South Africa, your relationship with your student is strictly defined such that there are hours you cannot meet your students. There are circumstances under which you should not be found with your students. There are communications you cannot have with your students. That is policy. This is the university policy, and anyone that violates this policy, you will be made to face the procedure. And after the procedure, if depending on the weight of infraction, then criminal prosecution can follow. So this is what we are saying. We are not saying that we should condone criminality, we should condone acts of indiscipline. ASU does not support it, and we believe our university system in Nigeria does not support it. But all over the world, even where you can say you have these laws, you will still have deviance. But if we strengthen the system, if we empower students to report, I give you the example of what we have done on our campuses as a way of we have intensified efforts in raising consciousness among our students. We have recently formed staff-student relationship committee, whereby we have suggestion boxes. Even anonymously, if you give us petition and you mention the name of a lecturer, we will put that lecturer under watch, and at the appropriate time, we'll subject that lecturer to our disciplinary procedure once we have sufficient evidence. Prima facie evidence, they call it. And if the union cannot handle it because of the weight of the infraction, we turn the staff to the university ethics committee. And there is no university ethics committee in Nigeria that you don't have representatives of academic staff. So to that extent, we are part of the existing structures. We are participating in the procedures and processes. And we, as a union, we do not condone it. We do not condone any act of sexual harassment in whatever disguise.
Thank you very much, Professor Ogunyemi, for your elaborate responses to some of the questions that we have already posed to you. You've raised some issues. I think that in the course of the conversation, we'll seek to clarify them. I want to bring in Prince Efeduku to try and respond to some of these issues. One is the field of coverage of the bill. Hawaii argues, Professor Ogunyemi also makes the argument, and backed up by what they say, where the comments and views of a number of civil society organizations that the bill should have covered the educational sector rather than targeting solely, as it were, the tertiary institutions. Why did the bill take this narrow view of the educational sector?
Okay, thank you. Now, first, I want to tell Prof. In South Africa, the Employment of Educators Act 1998, specifically Section 17, deals with almost everything in this bill. So it's not correct to say, to be referencing South Africa, because in researching this bill, we went to South Africa, we went to Australia, to the US, to the UK, and almost, let me just say several jurisdictions. So when Awa said that Nigeria is the only country at the moment that does not have a law specifically criminalizing sexual harassment, she's right. And
but what did Ogunyemi say about South Africa that you are quarreling with?
He kept referencing South Africa as a model to support his position. In rebuttal, I'm saying that even in South Africa, this bill draws a lot of strength from the South Africa Employers of Educators Act.
That's in addition to the policies that he also referenced.
Yes. That's point number one. But there is something that we need to actually discuss, which is based on your question. Now, in the University of Calabar, A lecturer was alleged to have harassed a student. The student was writing an exam. These are issues that we researched, we looked at them. The student was writing a test, not an exam. The dean, a dean then, went into the hall, tore the papers of the student, the writing,
the answer sheets.
The answer sheets. He tore them. The student was crying with the torn answer scripts in her hands. The dean said she should stand up and leave. So she stood up, packed the papers. As she was leaving, the dean then told that student to go to a particular office and wait for him. She went there. When the dean eventually came, he gave that student a fresh answer sheet that he should write again. As she was writing, the dean said, okay, for more comfort, go to my office. The student went there. The long and short of it is that that student was raped. The dean pleaded consent. Our knows that informed and voluntary consent is a defense to rape. Now, for students in secondary schools and pupils in primary schools, under the criminal code and the penal code at the moment, you cannot plead consent. The only thing that you need to do for the prosecutor is to prove the act. The actus reus. If you prove it, then that person can be convicted. Because that mental element to prove that the person actually committed the offense is not there. Now, why? Because we must understand that the reason why the framers of the law did that is that they know that the child or a minor who is in primary school or in secondary school is incapable of giving that informed and voluntary consent. Now, for me, my child looks up to me, and there's that relationship of authority, dependency, and trust. The child trusts me. The child depends on me. I have authority over the child. We are saying that every student in the tertiary institution, that in the eye of the law, as between the lecturer and the student, that relationship exists. That relationship of in loco parentis. That is, treat your student like your daughter. Treat your student like your child. And for us to be able to deal with that situation that happened in Calabar, you must remove consent from the equation. You must remove consent because a student who is held hostage by a predator lecturer is incapable of giving voluntary and informed consent. So our position is clear that at the moment there are extant legislations that already deal with that issue at the primary and the secondary school level.
We're talking about defilement now, not harassment. At those levels.
At those levels.
Yeah, that would be defilement. Not defilement, not harassment.
Yes. But what we are trying to say is that to the extent that that law provides, that the law provides already, that you cannot plead consent, we do not think that it becomes absolutely necessary to extend it. But that is a conversation that we can have.
You know, we would also...
So the point here really is, if ASU actually gauge the mood of the Nigerian people at that public hearing, I don't think, with the greatest respect to the prof, that he'll be saying what he's saying.
Well,
because their voice...
But he has raised some issues which also Haji Hawa raised. And we would also ask the views of Professor Yusuf in Kaduna. The issue of discrimination and, being subjective, just targeting a particular, yes. And if I may, I'll come back to you. I'd like to ask Professor Yusuf. The ASU president has, made observations about this bill, which in philosophy, which is my discipline, you would, tag as a fallacy, fallacy of ad hominem, targeting one person, leaving the issues and targeting, the person involved. Or it could also be a fallacy of post hoc ego propter hoc, which is, wrong inference. So are these positions strong enough to vitiate this bill?
The whole nation need to understand that ASU is not against the sexual harassment bill. When I started from the beginning, I highlighted the fact that we would have been happier if this bill extends to the whole society, because the pandemic of sexual harassment, as it were today, deserves a general or a holistic legislation, and not just the restriction to tertiary institutions. I was conscious of the fact that the ASU president is with us on this discussion and will be speaking for ASU, and that's why I did not highlight the fact that it is not that we are against. I say we because I'm an ASU member. We are not against the sexual harassment bill, but this bill could have been fantastic if it covers the whole populace and not restricted to the educator, in quotes, referring only to tertiary institution teachers. It is important for us to understand that this bill is coming in good time, because yes, there was this uproar that sexual harassment in the universities have escalated. As it were today, even the Kaduna State University has a sexual harassment document that tells you the stages you need to go through to report sexual harassment. As it were before, students did not have the pathway to make this reportage. But here we are today, even within these tertiary institutions, there is a pathway. Yes, like we are saying, it does not have a legal backing, and as such may not be able to take care of a lot of other windows. Here we have a bill that is now possibly going to have legal backing and will be able to take care of this pandemic. However, it will have been fantastic, and I say it will have been fantastic if this sexual harassment bill covers the whole society. I'm not limiting again to just the educational sector, including defilement, pedophiling, and all that. I am looking at the general society. If you have been following the trends in recent times during this COVID lockdown, you see there's an escalation of rape and other sexual harassment, because we keep thinking that when you say sexual harassment, it connotes even rape and others. So there is the need, like hugs, like kisses, as long as the consent is not there, it is a form of harassment. And the only way we can get this done, I challenge the legislative arm of our country to come up with an all-encompassing bill that will improve on the existing penal code and criminal code to actually get perpetrators to begin to fear engagement in such acts, one, and to also give victims the wherewithal to speak up. The conspiracy of silence, which all of us seem to be neglecting, is why this pandemic is on the rise. There is conspiracy of silence in the home. There is conspiracy of silence in the community. There is conspiracy of silence among religious bodies. There is conspiracy of silence even in the institutions, education institutions. And when I say education institutions, I'm not restricting it to the university. The fear of the unknown. When I speak out, what is going to happen to me? That is why people are not speaking. But here now, even the universities and other tertiary institutions are also having their own laws that gives the right to victims to speak out. When victims do not speak out, you don't know they have been harassed. So there is that need for the legislation to be strong or stringent to the extent that people know that when they speak, they will get justice. If people speak and they don't get justice, so it deters another person to speak up. People will say, after all, that person that spoke out, what happened? So there is the need for these bills. We agree that these laws should be there. And ASU is not against it. All we are saying, and all what the civil society and the general populace of Nigerians are saying is that give us laws that will eradicate sexual harassment or gender-based violence generally.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Yusuf. I think that it's important for us to clarify this for the purposes of this conversation and also for the benefit of our viewers. When you take a look at the criminal code or the penal code, you have the broad sections dealing with sexual offenses. Sexual offenses. There you have defilement, indecent assault, and rape. Rape is the most serious of all the sexual offenses you can think of. Now, sexual harassment is not the same thing, not necessarily the same thing as rape. And so Hawa is here, and so she will speak more to this. But so let's clarify that in the first instance. Sexual offenses in general, but this bill is specific to sexual harassment. Sexual harassment in tertiary institutions. You made a point earlier that you wished the bill had a much wider coverage, not just for tertiary institutions, but primary and secondary, and more particularly also sexual harassment at the workplace. Now, that point has also been amplified by Professor Ogunyemi and Professor Yusuf, but some persons would equally argue that you had provisions in the criminal code, you had provisions in the penal code, and yet you kept, this country had and still has the Fed Banks Act, the Fed Banks Decree, dealing with specific offenses in the banking sector. You had provisions, there's section 419 in the criminal code, deals with obtaining by false pretenses. And yet, you have Money Laundering Act, you have all kinds of legislation relating to all of those offenses that we now generally refer to as 419. So what therefore would be wrong with having a piece of what in law you call ad hominem legislation, which it isn't in this case, because ad hominem would target a particular individual. But in this case, it's said broadly tertiary institutions. What's wrong with that?
So, sorry, you also have CIDEL, you also have Child Right Act, which is broad.
Yes.
Yeah, I like I said when I made my earlier pitch, I said I wished it was broader and covered sexual harassment in the workplace and other areas, not just tertiary institutions. But I did say that it is still, it is still, I mean, it doesn't take away the importance of making sure that we criminalize sexual harassment. And like I said, the criminal code and the penal code do not adequately make provision for sexual harassment. Like you rightly said, sexual harassment is different from rape. In the bill, and permit me to just make reference to section 4 of the sexual harassment bill that has been passed. The first one says, an educator shall be guilty of committing an offense or a felony of sexual harassment if he or she, one, has sexual intercourse with a student or demands for sex for a student. For me, I have an issue with that. That is rape. So it shouldn't be regarded as sexual harassment. Subsection 2 says, intimidate or create a hostile or offensive environment for the student by soliciting for sex from the student or making sexual advances towards the student. The rape didn't happen, but you are soliciting. Yes. So that is harassment.
That's harassment.
Thirdly, directs or induces another person to commit any act of sexual harassment under this bill or cooperates in the commission of sexual harassment by another person without which it would not have been committed. Like that's aiding and abetting.
Abetting, that's right.
4, grabs, hugs, kisses, rubs or strokes or touches or pinches the breasts or hair or lips or hips or buttocks or any other sensual part of the body of a student. 5.
Even winking.
Displays, gifts, sends by hand or courier or electronic or any other means, naked or sexually explicit pictures or videos or sex-related objects to a student. And then 6, whistles or winks at a student or screams or exclaims or jokes or makes sexually complimentary or uncomplimentary remarks about a student's physique or stalks a student. This is, for me, very comprehensive.
In terms of sexual harassment. Not the first part.
Not the first part. The first part is rape.
Freedom, yeah.
So it's
there's
even
needs to
actually
also
trying to bring down rape and regard it as sexual harassment.
Well,
so that's is very important to say that this is sexual harassment. And let me tell you, it's the first time a bill or which we hope will become an act is now criminalizing these things. Even in the market, you see a woman passing and some man will just slap her button.
Yeah, those traders, they will say, "Madam, come and shop. Come and shop."
You know.
So, Prince Duku, what's your reaction to this? It's not a laughing matter, actually.
Please hold on. They said we need to take
a short break. Okay. Yes. All right, so we're going to take a short break now. And when we return, we'll continue with this conversation.
As a strong immune system increases the chances of victims surviving COVID-19, a corruption-free society creates opportunities for citizens to thrive and prosper. Build your immunity. Stop corruption now. Report all acts of corruption to ICPC on this toll-free number 0800 22 55 4272. This message is brought to you by ICPC and NTA.
Today on Happy Clean Niger Mission, we visit Mrs. Johnson live in Lagos. Helen Paul! Hello, madam. Would you like to join us on this mission? Yes, but how? Just one question for you. How do you keep your toilet clean?
I use regular detergent and bleach for washing and removing yellow stains. I have been using it for years.
Oh, madam, the regular detergents and bleach are used for washing clothes. To clean your toilet properly, you need Harpic 10X. It is specially made for stains in the toilet. Harpic Thick formula settles on stains and gives 10 times better cleaning compared to regular detergents and bleach.
Wow! Now I'm convinced, Helen Paul.
Really?
Yeah!
Now that she's part of the mission, the next house is yours.
She cried. She cried in anguish and in pain. She bears the scourge of her grief. She toils in vain for justice and succumbs to silence. He gloats over his malady. Like a beast, he pounces with no remorse. Her cry meant nothing. Her pain feeds her shame. Like an orphan, she is left to grieve in solitude. But no more will she cry in vain. Her adversaries will henceforth bear the brunt of their bestiality. Rape is evil. Rape is a plague, a pandemic of monumental consequences. We must unite and kick it out of our society.
Connect with NTA and stand against rape and rapists. This message is brought to you by the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA.
The number of the COVID-19 cases in Nigeria is increasing daily, with many more tests ongoing. The battle of testing, isolating, treating, and attending to the affected persons rests heavily on the shoulders of our health workers, constantly putting their lives on the line and at risk to contain this virus, save and protect the lives of millions of Nigerians. To these health workers, we at the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, on behalf of millions of Nigerians, say a big thank you for all that you have done and are doing. To the security agencies enforcing the lockdown and every other frontliner, we say thank you for putting your lives on the line to save ours. There is no amount of words that can quantify our gratitude. Thank you. This message is brought to you by the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, Africa's largest television network.
All right, you're welcome back, and still good morning, Nigeria, on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Let's return to Prince Efeduku. Prince Efeduku, I'm sure you're benefiting from the comments of the other guests on the scope of the bill, which has already been passed by the Senate, and we do hope that the House is listening to this. But there are certain provisions of the bill as passed already by the Senate. And some persons might argue that you are likely to have enforcement challenges arising from those provisions. Some of the provisions are quite clear, but how are you going to summon in evidence that an accused whistled, winked at you, or made sexually complimentary or uncomplimentary remark unless it is recorded? You can prove stalking. You can prove, the display of explicit material sent either by text or by video. Excuse me. Then you can also have difficulty with aspects relating to grabbing and hugging if there are no witnesses. Do these provisions not amount to surplusage and just focus on some of the key essentials that are fairly easy to prove, so that the law doesn't just become one that is on paper? I mean, you saw Monica Osage's case, the way she was able to record the conversation and the threats by Professor Akindele, who at some point was saying, stop calling my name, stop calling my name. And eventually, of course, I think it's in the slammer now. So the bill suffers from this, doesn't it?
It doesn't.
Why?
And we are in the internet age. If a lecturer knows that this is a law in existence, he is going to be more careful. He's going to look at the law, as we always say, before he takes certain steps. You don't know who has body camera. You don't know who is recording you. So in terms of evidence, we can leave that to he or she who wants to assert to go and prove their case when they eventually submit their petitions. So we cannot say that because of a possibility of one person not getting sufficient evidence, that we should not make the law. Because a student who is determined, like the UNILAG situation, who is determined to prove her case, will take serious steps to get the evidence in place.
And a lecturer, as Professor Ogunyabe rightly observed, a lecturer can also be set up. And then the electronic evidence can also be manipulated. So I'm whistling now. Let me do that. So at what point am I whistling? So you can manipulate it to form a whole, a seamless whole, that tends to prove that I have been harassing a student. I'm just talking about some of these aspects of the provisions of the law. I'm whistling, I'm winking. Is a wink permanent?
Look, under Title IX of the Higher Education Act 1972 of in America, these provisions are there.
We're talking about our jurisdiction.
No. We just want to say that we cannot think that we should be in isolation of the rest of the world. If it is operating somewhere out there very well, we should look at it whether the mischief that those laws sought to cure are also in our jurisdiction. If it is here, we should tailor it to suit our situation. What we are saying is that before a student would say, I want to make an official sexual harassment petition to the Independent Sexual Harassment Investigative Committee created under this bill.
That's right.
The student must have thought that I have a problem and I need to deal with this problem. So it is not, then again, the bill also provides for sanctions up to expulsion for a student who makes false allegation. And of course, under the laws of defamation, the lecturer, as the bill also provides, the lecturer is at liberty to take further civil action. So if the Attorney General makes a determination, or the police makes a determination that a prima facie case has been established, they will do that based on evidence at their disposal.
And the question he's asking is, how do you secure the evidence? For instance, winking, whistling. How do you get that evidence?
Whistling is an act. Whistling is an act. Winking is an act. And in the context in which it is done, if the student continues to feel uncomfortable about it, the student will also know that I have to get the evidence of this act to prove my case.
Okay, you know what?
And it may not be in isolation of other issues in this bill.
It could be supplementary, but
Yes.
the point is that it is there as part of the acts that are deemed to be offenses under the bill.
Yes.
Let's bring in Professor Biodun Ogunyemi one more time. Prof, of course, you've listened to all some of the matters arising as to why, for instance, the bill is not as broadly scoped as you had previously argued. What are your reactions now, pertaining also to the points that we have raised, namely the kind of acts or actions that could be deemed to be offenses?
Well, thank you very much. I'm happy that you have tried to engage your guest there on how to establish the evidence beyond reasonable doubt. Well, he said what I said about South Africa was not correct, but I'm insisting that most of these tracking done elsewhere, they are driven mostly by policies in the first instance. That is where you allow for internal mechanisms to be strengthened and to be exhausted before you invite external agents or agencies. The case of South Africa that I mentioned, there was a report one time about a student who was trying to frame up a professor, but not knowing that the professor was also recording. You know, went there, a female student was trying to undress herself with a view to incriminating the lecturer. But the student went ahead and got to the point of undressing herself to a point and raising alarm so that others could come and witness what was happening. And the lecturer was taken to court. Almost at the point of conviction, it was then the lecturer produced his own evidence. I'm happy you talked about the issue of technology. Technology can be used positively or negatively, depending on who is handling the process or the deployment. In some other places, what they have done includes installing CCTV cameras, you know, in strategic places. And that is even enough to create the awareness. And as you are taking up employment, you are given a policy that you need to study inside out. And those policies will have detailed what they call sexual offenses or sexual harassment situations. We think that this law, I think one of the provisions is that the student who frame up a lecturer will be suspended for I think a semester or 2 semesters. I can't remember now. But the lecturer will be sent to jail, probably without the option of fine. I think it's not balanced that way, and we need to take another look at it. But more importantly, like I said earlier, what has come out as final product after the public hearing, I still insist, does not reflect the direction or directions the debates were going when that public hearing was held. We were there. It's now that they have had public hearing in the last legislative year, session. We were there. Now this time around, when this bill was brought back, we were also there. And even lawyers, I think Federation of Women Lawyers or so, were there, and they were also arguing in the same direction that the definition of educators was not broad enough. Well, it's good when we make reference to what is happening in other places without necessarily recognizing other structures that are strengthening within the system. People keep quickly remind us that, well, if the structures have been working, why are we having those cases happening? Cases are happening in the larger society every day. And it's not as if we don't have laws related to sexual offenses, sexual molestations, rape, and other cases. But I think what we should be talking about is what will or what could stakeholders within the system do? Because at the end of the day, it is human beings that will implement laws. Laws are made for human beings. And unless you get the buy-in of those who we implement and enforce, I think this law is how to achieve three things. Probably to control, to prevent, and to redress or to address infractions. Those three goals will not be achieved unless we get the buy-in of the stakeholders. And that is why we are saying that right from the outset, let all criticisms that were thrown up in the course of discussion about this bill be revisited such that we don't have a bill that will, right from the outset, be resented and that will become a lame duck. I think as it were now, even if when this bill becomes law, it will apply first to the Federal Capital Territory, and later on we'll be talking about domestication in other states. And that is why it's good to carry along everybody, all stakeholders, and let people get the buy-in, let people see the point that we are making. I'm happy you talked about laws targeted at individuals. And I think in this instance, we have reason to still say that this law is stigmatizing. It appears as if every lecturer does it, and that every lecturer is a potential sexual predator. Male lecturer, of course, every male lecturer is a potential sexual predator. And that is not correct. Sexual harassment does not define the character of Nigerian scholars. And we should not give the impression to the whole world as if all we do in the universities is to search for the skirts of our students. That's not.
Professor Kuyami, I just like in less than 30 seconds, because this will be my last question to you. We have already established that ASU is not against the merit and justification for this law. We are all agreed. The law is good on its merit and justification. There are also provisions for, punishments for both offender and the accused, as the case may be. So I'm wondering, I don't really know, I don't know if Professor, what really is ASU's issue? What really, beyond the surface, what really is ASU's problem? Can you just state that for us, just in 30 seconds?
This bill. Is that the question?
What really is ASU's issue? If we agree that this bill is good on its merit and justification, and it has provision for punishment for both accuser and offender, as the case may be. So what is the issue?
The issue, if I must put it clearly, is that we need, just like the other two contributors, my colleague from Kaduna State University and your guests in the house have said, the issue is that we should talk about sexual harassment in the society as a whole, and let university policies drive the process of tracking. And from that policy, by applying the policy, by enforcing the policy, by strengthening the policy, we can identify those who will commit those infractions that will now turn to law enforcement agents to follow through in the process of prosecution. So our problem with that bill is that it is discriminatory because sexual offenses, sexual harassment occurs in almost every sector of the society.
All right, Professor Ogunyemi, thank you very much. Let's go very quickly now to Professor Yusuf at our Kaduna Network Studios. Professor Yusuf, Professor Ogunyemi talks about getting the buy-in of stakeholders so that the bill, when it becomes law, can be more effective. But let's play back the tape a bit. When we talk about sexual harassment, the general impression is that male lecturers are the usual culprits. Why does it appear that female lecturers in our tertiary institutions are complicit in the conspiracy of silence?
Remember, there was one discussion we had about 5-6 months ago on this issue of sexual harassment, and I stated clearly that the male lecturers are not the only perpetrators. Just like in the larger society, it's not just the men that are perpetrators. We have female perpetrators. And not until we look at sexual harassment broadly, encompassing even when the perpetrator is also female, then we will not be getting it right. It is important for us to know that sexual harassment could be male to female, female to female, or female to male. We don't narrow it to just male lecturers or the male gender. Both men and women can be perpetrators. The only snag here is that there are more male perpetrators than there are female perpetrators. So you find more female victims than you find male victims. The conspiracy of silence that I always refer to when I'm discussing issues of sexual harassment or sexual and gender-based violence generally is that at one point or the other, somebody somewhere who is supposed to talk or do something or take action is not doing it. And this is usually linked to stigmatization and the stereotype that you shouldn't be saying these things. Not until we are able to conquer that, and I think to a large extent we have started conquering that in the general society, and even in the university system, people are beginning to speak about it. But let's not forget the fact that even female lecturers are or could be perpetrators.
All right, thank you, Professor Yusuf. Haja Hawa, briefly, 30 seconds. Why are female lecturers silent about all this?
Yeah, I think this is a very important issue because the female lecturers, you know, should, like she said, some of them are also perpetrators, but we want to see more of these female lecturers coming out to speak in support of the victims of sexual harassment. You know, because when they do, it will encourage the victims or would-be victims to know that, oh, I can go and confide in a female lecturer and know that I will be protected and I will be supported to be able to ensure that the perpetrator is brought to book. Talking about culture of silence, yeah, it is a very big issue. But then my issue is this. When people do not break the culture of silence, what is responsible for it? The stigma, the fact that even when they speak up, how many people would come out to support them?
I'm sorry, Haja Hawa Shekarau. We've busted our time. Thank you, Hawa Shekarau, Chairman, Nigerian Bar Association, Abuja Branch, Unity Bar. Thank you very much for joining us for this conversation.
So much,
Let me also appreciate first from our Kaduna studio, we have Professor Hawa Evelyn Yusuf, Professor of Criminology and Gender Studies at the Kaduna State University. Thank you. We also have Professor Biodo Oguyemi, President of Academic Staff Union of Universities, ASU, joining us via Skype from Lagos. We appreciate you, Prof. And last but certainly not the least, the Special Advisor to the Deputy President of the Senate on Legislative and Plenary Matters, Prince Efe Duku. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
All right, Claire, we also have to appreciate those who sent in their tweets, quite a number of them, but of course we had to give time to our guests to say all of those issues. Some of you, of course, were talking about sexual harassment in the wider society, sex for contract, sex for promotion, and bosses who harass their subordinates, and if they don't succumb, they send them on punitive transfers to Siberia. Some who would also ask, it's a weekend now, so can we go? All right, it's on that note, we'd like to thank you for tuning in to Good Morning Nigeria. Also, the week we are back on Monday, same time, 7 o'clock in the morning. Until then, take responsibility, be safe, and be well. I'm Kingsley Osadolo.
And I'm Claire Dilabo Abdul Razak. We'll see you next week by God's grace. Bye-bye.